I want to spend a few minutes just sort of setting my thoughts down about where we've come from and where we're going to go. The only way I can look at it is the sense that when I started with a few friends and partners in literally in my garage. It's a nice garage. I've started several times in my garage. This is probably the nicest, but we did start in the garage. And we looked ahead and we saw this, what seemed like a really insurmountable mountain ahead of us. And today, if we look back and look at those companies, we look at the stats, the number of investors who have joined us and the money that's been raised, it turns out that we actually hit our goals. It's the first business plan I've ever done that actually we hit the numbers, we're on budget. Okay, it's rather remarkable. That's no fault of my own. I mean, it's the team. But now, all of a sudden, we got up to that, what looked like a mountain, and now, all of a sudden, K2 is in front of us. Because the horizon has changed. The goal has changed. We have a chance now to actually not just build this really cool way of democratizing and essentially changing the way that, Israeli companies are funded, but to actually do this on a global level. And when we had the idea, we had sort of modest goals, good goals, okay? Democratize, help people connect to the startup nation, back companies that are going to do good for the world, and make some money while doing so for ourselves and our investors. And we got these numbers, okay? I mean, if you look at what has happened, you just heard it from Donna, you look at who's here today, you look at some of the co-investors who've co-invested with us now multiple times. Companies like General Electric and Microsoft and 3M and venture funds like Vinod Khosla's Khosla Ventures has now done, I think, 5 deals with us. This is successful, but really the horizon has changed. We've got a much bigger challenge ahead of us. Thank God that the real story here is about the companies. If you look at these 55 companies we've backed, they're just remarkable. And we just showed you a touch of them in that video. And if you look at, obviously we're going to hear this just a second from Rewalk and from the CEO. We're very proud of this company, which has gone public in NASDAQ, become one of the 3 top IPOs in terms of its post-market performance for the year. We're very proud of a new company called Pixie, who's just written up in the Wall Street Journal. You're going to hear a lot about that company. It's just getting started. About Inverid, who's really changing the world of big buildings and how air conditioning is done and saving energy. Billguard, which just signed a huge transformational deal with Experian about credit card protection. MetaWare, which is essentially preventing deaths by prescription error, where we're co-invested with General Electric. Our companies are continually on a almost day-to-day basis winning awards. So literally, these are just the awards in the last 60 days, where Freightos won one of the 3 grand awards out of almost 600 companies in Hong Kong. Consumer Physics and Inverid came in the top 10 of the rather prestigious Globes competition down in Tel Aviv about a month ago. Last year, by the way, if there's any indication, Rewalk was one of the top 10. We're hoping the same good things happen to these 2 companies. Aploy came in number 3 out of several thousand at the Web Summit in Dublin. Billguard was actually not the 4th best, was the best finance app of 2014 and the 4th best app all around on Google, so it's a little error, but these are just an indication of how our companies are doing in terms of awards. The IPO of Rewalk was important to us, not just because it was a good investment, but because we proved that this model works, that we can get ourselves into the best kind of deals and deliver real results for investors. Before that, people said, well, crowdfunding is going to have to obviously have a negative sort of feedback loop, right? You're going to get all the VC leftovers. You're not going to get into the best deals, because the best deals are going to stay with the club behind the doors. And that's clearly not the case, because Rewalk is really one of the very best deals. If you look at what's happening, though, is we're building now a franchise. So it turns out that the co-founder of Rewalk, the man whose genius is now actually, in addition to Rewalk, is building a new company. And he took that new company back into our crowd, okay, to get funding. And by the way, when we put it up on the site, within a week we had 5 times over subscription. And a lot of you, by the way, are not entirely happy with that. Because you indicated, for a certain amount of money, and we came back and said, yeah, you get 20% of it. We're trying to work on that. We're trying to get bigger deals and trying to figure out ways that perhaps we can make that algorithm of allocation a little more sophisticated and reward people who are investing heavily on the platform or helping our companies. We'll talk more about that later. If you look at what happened just last week with Core Photonics, a deal we just put up on the site, again, literally this was fully subscribed. And it was only $1.4 million, right? And listen to how we're talking. If I, 2 years ago said only $1.4 million, we were dreaming on a crowdfunding site of raising $1.4 million. But we did $1.4 million essentially by the time the webinar is over. Those of you who don't fully understand the site, the way it works is we launch a company, we invite people to come, and they join a webinar. And by the time this webinar was done, the $1.4 million was in. An hour later, it was basically double oversubscribed. And now I think we're, this is a shot from yesterday, I don't know where we are today, but I think it's close to $4 million. So the distribution mechanism here works. We can bring investors from around the world to very, very good companies seamlessly and without friction. And now we're going to introduce it in a second, right after Larry, but we're going to also today introduce the biggest deal that we've ever done. And I'll just tell you, without getting too much into it at the moment, this is really going to knock your socks off, and we're pretty excited about it, especially given what's going on in the world this week. Yesterday, okay, KPMG, who's one of our sponsors, very proud. I didn't know that the sponsorship included this award, but the bottom line is that they just published a worldwide list of the top 50 best fintech innovators, and we were named number 22, which is very respectable. Overall, among a bunch of really big companies that you'll recognize, but what was really cool is that of the 4 crowdfunding companies, equity crowdfunding companies who were listed there, we were number 1. So we led the equity crowdfunding group, and we're pretty happy about that. We've got this wonderful storm at our back, okay? Sometimes people think storms are dangerous and pejorative and negative. I sort of like storms, and especially if you've got this huge, tailwind, which is not in your face, but, in your back, driving you up that hill. It's important. And the fintech, or the financial technology area, is really driving us. If you look at what's going on this week, Lending Club is hopefully going to price. Lending Club is the largest, peer-to-peer lending platform. There are others who are waiting literally on deck. On deck is there, and SoFi and others. And then what's going to be next in this area, clearly, is equity crowdfunding. Our market is growing from $5 billion to over $100 billion based on all the studies. We've got this huge storm at our back. And when you look at how we stack up with our competition, we've raised more money, and I want to stress that, we've raised more money than all of our competitors worldwide, including Silicon Valley, Europe. They are eating our dust. Okay, literally, here in Jerusalem, okay, we are generating more investment for startups, for Israeli startups primarily, but now increasingly local startups, than the best of Silicon Valley. And we intend to not just maintain the lead, but to extend the lead going forward. We just, again, I think this is about a week ago, PitchBook, which is sort of the, one of the authoritative gauges of what's going on in our market, sort of named who are the top investors in terms of companies in Israel in the last 5 years. Now, we've been launched for 18 months. We haven't been around in 5 years, but according to PitchBook, we're already number 2 on the 5-year challenge. So I can't wait to see the next 5 years where we'll be on that, and the magazines have really indicated our size. This is all about the people. I am blessed to be working with just an extraordinary team. Too many people to mention here individually other than Donna Mann, who made this whole thing work. You'll get exposed to a lot of our team members during the day. Please talk to them, consult with them. We're also very privileged to have an incredible team of mentors and advisors, and most importantly, investors, people who believe in this vision and made this vision happen from the beginning. We're now growing our global footprint. We have 4 offices up and running. We intend to open up more offices. We have new initiatives all over the world. We have 2 Spanish-speaking staff who are working in Latin America. We closed our first Chinese investor in Mandarin with a new Mandarin-speaking staff person. We're working in Europe in a variety of languages, but particularly Hungarian and Swedish. That's a hat tip to Dennis, those of you who know him. And there's all kinds of good things happening in terms of how we grow our community, because really what's this ultimately about is not just this website. And I think this is, people say, well, what made you guys win, at least so far, in the first act of this equity crowdfunding game? How are you beating Silicon Valley? What's your secret sauce? And other than the fact that, as the mayor mentioned, we're here in Israel, it's Startup Nation, we got the chops, if you will. I think there are a couple of things that are different. Number one is that we did benefit hugely from the, let's call it the passion that many of our investors have for Israel and for Startup Nation. Turns out that's been an exceptional weapon for us, and we intend to continue to use that. And as we grow global, we're not going to abandon Israel. We're going to strengthen Israel's position in the world of innovation. We're going to hook up many, many thousands and tens of thousands of new investors to these companies. But the second part of this is that we understood that investing, while it can now be democratized via the web, where you can open it up to a lot of people, it's all about ultimately building a community, people feeling comfortable. And so we have, all over the world, done events. This is just one of 200 events we've done face-to-face in the last year. You have pictures there of other events where you have 50 or 100 or 200 people in places like New York and Sydney and all over. And we intend to do that and to maintain our personal service and our points of contact. Next year, look, I'm not going to make a prediction. This was just published in TechCrunch. We'll more than double. We did $26 million of investment in the first year, which was 2013. This year we'll do about 60, and we'll more than double next year. We're going to invest a lot of money in Israel. We're going to bring up a whole new cadre of companies. We're going to continue to support the companies we have, and we're very delighted. But at this point, I want to now bring up perhaps our most successful and exciting company. Larry Jasinski, who's the CEO of Rewalk, which used to be called Argo, is now called Rewalk, took his company, from very early stages, which he's done, by the way, in the past. He's had 2 successful other exits. This is just his 3rd and biggest exit. He turned it into a very successful IPO. The company's got FDA clearance. He's been just a great supporter of our crowd. We're delighted to be partners with him. And Larry Jasinski, the CEO of Rewalk, please.